We usually think of big data in terms of things like insights or answers, but how can it also be used to create experiences?
Well, so the important thing is to remember that the data represents something. It's like this encoding of something real. And as we move to more social data streams or data that represents people more, we have to be more thoughtful around what that data is actually representing. And so like the first case would be privacy is a big example of, we share this data that has sort of objective value, but we also carry with it a lot of concerns and preconceptions about what should happen with that data. And so you have to kind of think about that from an experience perspective in how you treat that data and how you show it. The second one would be, again, with personal data, sort of in how you present it. So I think you see a huge amount of changes in sort of quantified self between sort of very health-oriented, objective take on the data before that didn't get a lot of traction. And you see something like Nike Fit come around, and they did a really good job of creating a normalization for that data that made it fun and engageable. And that one change kind of changed the way all of my friends sort of think about quantified self data, and they're like much more in tune to engage with that sort of thing now because someone's thought through the experience of what the data represents.
Interesting. So it can unlock an entirely different experience for people in addition.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Are visualizations becoming interfaces?
Absolutely, not as fast as I would like them to be. But I think one of the really great things about iPads and such is that they have this sort of tactile nature to them. And visualizations, because they have these sort of objects that represent the screen, are actually become a really good way of interacting with the underlying data elements. It becomes much faster to engage with things, particularly as we move away from a typewritten interface. Also, I think that as people become, and this is one of the bets that we made at Bloom, was as people become more fluent in video game mechanics, engaging in these very graphical environments becomes much more natural to people. And so it's more of a first-rank interaction metaphor than keyboards and such. And so we think that we are really bullish on visualizations as interaction.
Do you see it supplanting some current input mechanisms?
Almost for everything, yes.
Really?
I think if you believe in gestures, I think you have to believe in visualization as the primary interface.
You're right. It seems like it would be a natural extension of it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. What is the relationship between art and data? I mean, how do they shape each other? And this is a question I don't get to ask very often, so I'm glad we get a chance to do it.
We could have a whole other conference right around this topic. I see basically as there's three movements that are happening in that interaction. There's sort of the first one, sort of in the Aaron Koblin kind of flight patterns take on things, where there's a really lovely visual interaction or visual display that someone wants to create, and the data really supplies texture or complexity to that thing, right? And the meaning may be secondary. The meaning may come out over like really viewing the data through this visual transform that the artist has created, but it's not primary. I then also see another set of people. I think Ben Rubin and Listening Post, and a lot of the work that Jonathan Harris does, where the art becomes a presentation of the existence of the data. So Ben Rubin would show ICQ logs, I think, or something like that, or no, IRC logs in chat rooms and such, and just sort of show people who weren't experienced with that data source and that community that there was this thing, and that was the artistic interpretation, was this giant LED screen showing all this stuff, or Jonathan Harris showing you that people are writing their emotions out on the web. That's basically the hook of that piece. It was phenomenally successful, and it's really just about that this data exists. And then I think you see sort of the what I think may be the future is artists engaging with the data to find the connections. And I think something like what Stamen did with CNN for the deaths in Afghanistan, where they linked the location where a soldier was killed, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, with their hometown in the United States, and kind of these dual map experiences. And you really, you feel that connection going back and forth between the two locations and how abstracted it is, in our normal life. And I think, those are kind of the three ways people are playing with art and data.
Last question for you. You mentioned a couple of examples just before there, but what are some of the other people and projects you're tracking these days?
So these days I'm really into geostatistics and things like that. And so what I'm really looking, and I'm also done with tools, so what I'm really looking for are people who are creating new data sets. And the three that I'm really looking into are the open quantified self movement, which I think is really fascinating and getting really far into hacking all the devices and making them much more accessible. I think Open Planner, which is doing a really good job on routing and gathering all these data sets that you require to build an open source transit routing system. And then OpenStreetMap, which I think is the most underrated data set out there. I think it's going to be the last large, unlicensed, encumbered data set that we're going to get to play with. And I just hope that they can make it even bigger.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time.